Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My task today is to talk to you a bit about public education in tobacco control and some of the challenges that we may face in the future. But to start with, let's just get on the same page as to where we are with the evidence at the moment. So there's very strong evidence that mass reach media campaigns can change tobacco use. This is probably the behaviour for which there's the strongest evidence of all the health behaviours. And that happens through both reducing the uptake of smoking and the contribution that mass media campaigns make to increasing quit attempts, to increasing the success of quit attempts, and also among recent quitters to reducing the likelihood of ex-smokers relapsing back to smoking. Mass media campaigns can have quite a high upfront costs, and the costs of buying into them are going up all the time. But because of their mass population reach and their population level effects, they're highly cost effective, and there's been a couple of a review and another great study published in the last few years on that. We also know quite a lot about the types of mass media messages that are likely to be most successful and drive observed population level effects. And these are campaigns that communicate the serious health effects of tobacco use. And we also know about the dose of effects as well. So there have been independent studies from Australia, the UK and the US, which have kind of triangulated a dose of around 400 target audience rating points a month, summing to about 4,800 target audience rating points a year for television-led mass media campaigns to actually impact on behaviour change. Now, I think before we get into challenges, it's important to appreciate how mass media are thought to change behaviour at a population level. There's good evidence that I've just very quickly summarised that mass media works not only by changing individual behaviour, as you see in this slide here, but also by influencing social norms around the behaviour and by increasing support for quitting from the individual's close social network. So addressing some of those issues that Colin was talking about earlier in terms of social norms for smoking. Mass media campaigns also increase broader public support for policies and laws that make it harder to engage in that behaviour as well. So they're kind of a combination strategy. And together, these policy changes and social norms and attempts to change one's individual behaviour provide an environment that really amplifies the impact of campaigns and increases the likelihood that we will see declines at the population level in tobacco use. Now, the key factor that drives this cycle is the ability of the media to reach just about everyone in the broad population. And we've done that in the past as part of people's routine viewing, and that is everyone is exposed incidentally as part of their routine viewing of television. TV has been an ideal way to do this because nearly everyone is exposed whenever they're watching their programs, whether they want to be or not. So this has made television-led mass media campaigns a kind of overarching umbrella strategy for changing population social norms about tobacco, for helping to provide a reason for why we're going after changing government tobacco policies, for encouraging quit attempts, and also for directing people to smoking cessation services. But our use of media is changing. We're watching less television and we're using more online and social media. That's not happening in a linear fashion. It's happening in a way where we're using a lot more media at the same time. We're kind of multitasking. So while this is changing the environment for public health messaging, television, though, still actually remains the main channel of choice for mass communication to populations. And you can see from this graph that any watching of commercial television in Australia has definitely declined in the last 7 years. This is National Household Survey data on adults' commercial TV watching from one of the nation's largest research agencies, and it's for our largest Australian capital cities. This is for the whole population, but lower socioeconomic groups, where many of our smokers actually watch more commercial TV than shown here. This data is presented by age group, and you can see that the 50-plus group in the purple have the highest TV watching, commercial TV watching patterns. But even among the 18 to 24-year-olds, yes, their use of commercial TV is declining at a faster rate than the older age groups. So last year, only about 70% were watching any commercial TV on an average weeknight. But that's still the bulk of this age group. So when we look closer at the 18 to 24-year-olds, the overall amount of commercial TV they're watching is declining as well, but many are still watching quite a bit. But this is clearly going to reduce in future. But what this picture is telling us right now is that we have a window of opportunity right now and over the next some years to broadcast our television-led mass media campaigns to contribute to reducing population-level tobacco use, and Australia will be very similar to many other countries in that respect. A key future challenge we'll face is, can digital and social media achieve impacts on actual individual behaviour change, as well as on impacting on changing social norms and support for policy change, as has been achieved using television-led campaigns. So we clearly should be doing research now on how best to use these newer media channels and platforms for public health education and for tobacco control, and especially on understanding the extent to which newer media can contribute to changing behaviours at the population level, not just getting exposure and knowing that people are exposed, but actually changing behaviour. So far, online and social media channels are really best viewed as complementary media channels rather than the drivers or leaders of exposure. So in future, the next slide that I have really is based around the concept that there's going to be a lot more competition for media messages as well, and we're going to have a much more cluttered media environment. So this means that audiences are going to be much more discriminating about what they opt into viewing and engaging with. At the moment on television, as I mentioned, you're exposed whether you want to be or not. So this change in how people might consume media in the future will mean that we might need to use particular kinds of messages to try to engage audiences. For example, we might need to use surprising messages, emotive messages, personal stories that people can connect with, supportive messages, and messages more tailored to personal circumstances. Here's an example of an innovation in the way traditional media could be used. This example is actually from Sweden, from a pharmacy chain, where this electronic billboard surprises smokers when the man's image coughs as the billboard senses his tobacco smoke as he's walking nearby. And it was used as a New Year promotion to encourage people to try nicotine replacement therapy to help them quit. Emotive messages that present the serious harms of smoking will likely still have a role, because smokers often ask to be scared into trying to quit, since these messages increase their motivation. Governments often shy away from airing them, but they can of course be aired in conjunction with more supportive how to quit messages as well, and pairing those two together might be a good strategy. Moving on from paid media, I think one of the things we are going to see in the future, well, actually we're seeing quite a lot of it now, really, a lot more fake news. We've certainly seen a lot of fake news from the tobacco industry in the last 5 years in Australia on plain packaging, but I think we're going to see a lot more of this in the future from the industry and other vested interests. And this makes the role of trusted advocacy even more important, and I'm sure others on the panel will visit this topic. Finally, I think that the tobacco pack itself is going to become even more important in the future as other ways of communicating with smokers becomes more piecemeal. So plain or standardised packaging with larger graphic health warnings has clearly been a very important way for communicating with smokers in Australia. And packs are really an important communication device. Certainly the tobacco industry has known that because smokers take packs out and use them many, many times a day. These are Australian packs, but there are now many other countries following and implementing plain packaging, which is really wonderful to see. And the research and the evaluation that we did on plain packaging showed, I think overwhelmingly, that it was the large graphic health warning element of the recipe in these packs that was really driving a lot of the initial effects in terms of getting smokers to have a go at quitting and helping them be successful in the first few years after plain packaging, and that drove the declines in prevalence that we've seen. And it's the overall look of the pack and the fact that it looks so yucky that's really discouraging to kids, and we're also starting to see declines in youth smoking as well. So it's a sort of a different mechanism. I think one of the things that we know is that if the packs are important and the messages on the packs are important, we need to ensure that we're refreshing warnings regularly because they do wear out. We haven't got it completely right in Australia, and I think that there are certainly improvements to plain or standardised packaging that other governments are learning from our experience and implementing. We certainly need to further standardise packaging because the industry is continuing to use its remaining ability to communicate with smokers to its full potential. So, for example, on the left-hand side, they've used more descriptive brand variant names on the pack, and this hybrid regular to fresh variant naming lets smokers know about the menthol crush ball in the filter that turns a regular cigarette into a menthol cigarette. And on the right-hand side, using the term Lucy in the variant name to suggest to smokers that there's one extra cigarette in the pack, a pack of 21 cigarettes, that they can share with someone else. Isn't that nice? So just as tobacco companies are using QR codes on packs to encourage smokers to sign up for events and special offers or to find a nearby smoking permitted area, so we could be exploiting these technologies in future to provide public health messages or sources of smoking cessation help. Technologies like near-field communication could also help us to embed tags on packs where consumers touch their NFC-enabled smartphone to the pack to access text and website information, or even to hear spoken advice. Audio messages especially, I think, might hold promise for those with low literacy. And interestingly, some of these technologies are beginning to be used on some pharmaceutical products to enhance compliance. And why stop at the pack? We could also be communicating with smokers by changing the stick, as some of the innovative research that has been led by Janet Hook from New Zealand has shown. All of these sticks were rated by smokers as more dissuasive than the top-looking, regular-looking stick, with the minutes of life lost stick at the bottom being the most aversive. So they're just some of the ways that I think we could be exploring in the future and some of the challenges that we're going to have in public education. Thank you.